What is up, Chiefs Kingdom? Welcome back to One on One, a KC Sports Network podcast with myself, Mike DeVito, former 9-year NFL veteran with the New York Jets and the Kansas City Chiefs. And I am here with my brother and my co-host, Jeff Allen, offensive line great, 9-year NFL veteran. Obviously, all you Chiefs fans know him, and Super Bowl champion. Got to get that in because that is just amazing. And so we are here to talk to you about all things Kansas City from a player's perspective. Before we would jump in, Jeff, this podcast is brought to you by Cookie Society Cookies. Cookie Society ships nationwide, the best cookies out there. You can trust us. We're linemen. They're fantastic. Check them out, cookiesocietycookies.com. And thank you to them for sponsoring the show. Big Jeff, what's up, man? How you doing today?
What's up, man? Good to see another day. Talk some football.
Talk some ball.
OTAs, of course. That's the topic today. And share our thoughts on that.
Yeah. It's interesting because OTAs is one of those things for a player that it really depends on where you are at in your career and where you're at team-wise, whether it's a place you've been for a while or a place that you just got to, where that really contributes into if you like OTAs as a player or dislike OTAs as a player, right? So just from my own experience in Kansas City, I had spent 6 years with the Jets. Bob Sutton leaves New York, comes to Kansas City with Andy Reid in 2013, takes me with him. And the first training camp is important, right? You're getting to learn what Andy Reid is like, what his philosophy is like. I'm sorry, the first OTAs and mini camps and all the stuff that happens before training camp. So you come out to Kansas City in April, you spend 2 months there. And you're learning the philosophies, right? You're learning what Andy Reid is about. You're learning about what his style is like. You're meeting the guys for the first time, right? I remember that was really weird to be in a locker room with new players in a new facility, and so it was really important for us that year to get together in OTAs and get after it and gel as a group. Then you start getting into the years, 2014, 2015. You're there, after that. Now these guys have been together for a long time. You have Andy Reid there for a long time, and I feel like as a player, you start to think, man, I think I could be more productive at home, right? Like I feel like I could be more productive at the house. I don't need to go through the playbook again, right? Like as a defense. So again, I came from New York. We brought the same defense. So the same defense I had spent 6 years playing in New York. Now we're playing it in Kansas City. And so all the meetings where you're going through the basic defenses, right? And all the practices where you're going through the basic stuff. And I'm just like, man, what are we doing? So I don't know. What are your like? So there were times in my career I liked it, times in my career I hated it. How did you feel about it?
I agree with you 100%. I think as I got older, being in the same system year after year, it's repetitive. The basics. OTAs is basically an extension of rookie minicamp.
Right.
It's for the younger guys or for the new guys coming in who don't know the system. But early on, I think the great part is you're back in the building around the guys.
Yeah.
That never gets old.
Right.
The off season, depending on how far you go, it seems pretty long. You're itching to get back out there. So it's fun from that standpoint, but the classroom work, it gets really repetitive the older you get. It's like learning addition again, especially when you got things down. And as an O-lineman, especially OTAs, especially Andy Reid, it's a passing camp. So it's all for the receivers, all for the quarterbacks, the defensive backs. It's not a big man camp. We're just there in place. They can have the orange cones for that.
Yeah.
But we get our work in training camp when we put the pads on. So that's the fun time for us. So I would have to agree with you. It's not the greatest time in the world at OTAs, especially as a veteran O-lineman.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you bring that up because I remember when I was – Tommy Brazier was our coach, our defensive line coach when I was with the Chiefs. And, Tommy Brazier had been around the game forever. I mean, he was like 100 years old back then. So he had been around the game forever. And he was very blunt and honest with us always. And he always said, I hate OTAs. He's like, because it's 2 months of you guys, or, whatever OTAs was, the 10 practices in the minicamp. He said, it's 10 practices in a minicamp for you linemen to learn bad techniques that I have to take the first week and a half of training camp and coach out of you, right? Because so you normally when you practice during the regular season, you're either in pads or in what we call spiders, which are like these soft shell pads. And in both cases, the soft shell pads, you can still get a feel for playing defensive line, for staying off, or playing offensive line. I mean, it's not great. It's not as good as pads are. Pads, there's nothing that mimics pads. But you get to take the pads off. You put the spiders on. It's a little less impact, but you still got to stay low. You still got to prayer technique. In OTAs, there's none of that. I mean, you're just out there in helmets. And Jeff, you especially as a veteran, you hate that guy, offensive, defensive line.
Yeah, who's going all out.
100 miles. I mean, you just terrible. You hate that guy. You're fighting with that guy all the time. You're like, will you stop? And it's always a rookie. It's trying to make
the young guy.
Yeah, and you understand. You get it. Because
usually that's the first guy that gets dumped in training camp. Like everybody's going after him, or vice versa on defense. You're just trying to destroy that guy. Like, this is what the real deal's like.
That's
right. But I mean, it's all fun and games. I mean, you got to understand. I mean, we were all young at some point, so it gets frustrating. But it's almost like dealing with your kids. They don't know any better, and they just got to get their footing in the game and understand what it's like to be a pro. I always give them a pass early on. But if it's a repeat offender, that's when I get upset.
That's right. You'd be the last person I would want to do that to. But yeah, no. And so for the rookies, like, you get it. You understand what they're going through. You understand that they have to show up, and as frustrating it is. But as the older guys, like, we know the tempo, and so you kind of make it look good. You get out your stance, but it's really you're standing up high. You're throwing your hands out. Like, it really did create bad habits that you would have to detox in training camp. At least as a defensive lineman, I thought it did. And so I remember when Brazier said that, I was like, well, then why are we doing it? Especially the run game, right? Why are we doing the run game? We're just standing up. It's awful. Why are we doing this? And I just read or saw an Andy Reid's press conference, and you can attest to this. I didn't realize this, but he had changed it now. Now OTAs is just a passing camp, so that you're not doing any sort of run game. So, like, with the pass rush stuff, you always get that one guy that's going to bull rush like an idiot. But, like, outside of that, you can get some good hand technique work in. You can work side to side, working on the edges, hand fighting. So you can get some of that work in. So how has Andy Reid been? Because I feel like when I was there, we were doing the run stuff in OTA and minicamp. So he changed that at some point, huh?
That was over the course of like the last 4 or 5 years where he kind of changed that. We weren't really getting any good work in the run game, and it makes sense. You can't really go full speed without pads as an old D lineman because it's a health hazard. Guys get hurt. So he switched to more passing, and I think they get a lot of good work at the skill position guys. The timing doesn't really change for them. I mean, it's the same with or without pads. So, they're getting a lot of work in, learning the formations, getting the routes down, and quarterback getting the timing with the receivers. So that's beneficial for them. But as an O-lineman, it's kind of like a gray area. So you're not really getting too much work on the field, but you do get a lot of beneficial work in the classroom. I think one of the things that Andy Heck, the offensive line coach, he does a good job of not making it repetitive for the veteran guys. Mm-hmm. The further you get along in your career, you start learning new things. We start learning coverages. That's something not a lot of O-line coaches teach offensive linemen, but everything ties together.
What Andy Reid's doing now, and you talked about Andy Heck and adding different things in. I was always thinking, why don't we just, if we're gonna learn bad habits, why don't we just because you're right, the skill guys got to do it. Their stuff is all about timing, all about route running, all about being on the same page. With the big guys, if we're just gonna learn bad habits, and the offseason's already so truncated, right, compared to what it was before the now the 2 CBAs that have been in place. I remember the strength coaches saying, wow, this is hard. We got really 2 weeks to get you guys acclimated, 3 weeks of the actual program, and then OTAs start. And as a big guy, that weight room was just important for us as the on the field stuff. So I remember thinking, why don't we just keep going in the weight room? Yeah, let the big guys lift and run and train and do and get big and strong and nasty.
They need to get you in those meetings at the those league meetings so they can understand what we're going through as big guys. I think that's a really good idea. Let us do our own thing. Let us lift weights. Get the cardio that we need as big guys. Get our feet back underneath us and let those skilled guys work on their timing. And our real work will be done, at training camp.
That's exactly right. And you can still go out there as a group and do indie and hit the bags and stuff. You can still get together in the do film study and do all that stuff that benefits you. but stay off the field, stay off your feet, and get in there and work out and just start getting nasty at it. So
I would say this though. I think this year is critical because it's an entire new group with the O line.
yeah,
It's
that's
all 5 guys are new starters practically.
yeah,
So
yeah.
this
Well,
is
and
really
that's a-
good. This is really good for them. They're learning in the classroom and going out in the field. And they can get some things down in the pass game, learning protections,
Yeah.
as far as communication and being on the same page there. So that's a good head start for them. So this year, it's good for them.
Yeah, so I guess it's not cookie cutter, right? Like it's not one
Yeah.
size fits all. It depends on sort of the team and the group that you have. You're right. I mean, a quarterback, and this is something you can you have first person experience of this, but a quarterback and offensive line, the ability to gel there is vital. I remember
Yes.
when Brett Favre, right? So we had Chad Pennington with the Jets, and then Chad left, and Brett Favre came in, and Brett Favre had a nasty hard count. I mean, he had this hard count where he could.
Yep.
I mean, everybody would jump, and I remember our offense couldn't do it because the offensive linemen weren't used to hearing it, and so they would jump every time. I mean, it was so good that the offensive line would jump.
Yep.
And so I remember the offensive line and Brett like just staying after to do cadence work because they had to get on the same page, and that's just one little thing.
Yeah, it's the little details that you take for granted as you get older. When you're the same group, I mean, those are the things that you're just used to. But as a new face and a new unit, those are things you have to pick up. Cadence is huge, especially for Pat. He does a really good job of getting guys to jump, and that's when they get a lot of free plays. So I think them learning those things early on, them knowing each other, them making the correct calls, and then also
there's a lot on the plate for a rookie center in Andy Reid's offense. Just a veteran center. He's responsible for setting up the protections, making the mic point in both the pass and the run, and being on the same page with Pat, making sure he gets him the ball where he wants it in the shotgun. There's a ton of responsibility for the center. So it's going to be critical for Creed Humphrey, and I'm looking forward to seeing him develop and grow.
So now talk about that some more, Jeff. How is it? Because the center, you're right, is such a pivotal position. I mean, people think the quarterback's making all the calls. A lot of times it's the center that's making all the calls, setting the protections, picking up the blitzes. And so what is it like for a guard and a tackle or the guys on the outside when you have a rookie at the helm? Do you have to try to help him a lot to get him on the right page and then relay the calls? I mean, what's that like inside there?
Yeah, definitely. Everyone's going to be helping him. It's a team effort. Quarterback's going to be helping tackles, guards. Everyone's going to be seeing indicators. As he goes along throughout the season, he'll start to pick up things. But early on, there's going to be some things that he doesn't quite catch, and it's going to take some time. So it's going to be up to those veteran guys that are around him to get him up to speed and actually cover some of those things for him. But he has one of the smartest quarterbacks in the league behind center. So ultimately, at the end of the day, no matter what point he makes, Patrick's going to make him right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny, as a defensive lineman, I used to love to take advantage of whenever there was a new guy, even if it was an older guy who just hadn't been in the system, right, who had just gotten there. I would stem the fronts around, move guys all over, try to get them to talk, right? So you can, if anything, at a minimum, you can pick up on, terminology, right? So it's okay, what does he say? What words is he using? What happened after he said, BB or AA, right? Get them talking.
Man,
so you can, that's right.
It's amazing when you're a younger guy or a guy that doesn't quite know the system very well, what happens when a guy moves from a one technique to a three technique. Just that small change, it's a nightmare. You're like, what do I do now? What do I do? What do I do? What's the call?
That's right.
So it's tough to keep up when you don't know what's going on. So that's the hardest part as any position in the league as a rookie is mentally, are you there yet?
Right.
You're going to constantly hear that throughout OTAs, throughout training camp. When these coaches and players are talking about the young guys, they're not going to talk about their skill set too much. They're going to be talking about, are they mentally ready?
Right.
Because we're all physically gifted. We all have, what it takes to play the game. But what sets people apart is mentally, are you there?
No,
are you anticipating everything the right way?
And that's why, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, that's why OTAs are important, right? So as like an older guy, we can sit here and complain about it. But, week 2, week 3, week 4 come around and you have that rookie that's had the reps that is starting to get used to the offense. And because he built that foundation in OTAs, that's where it really pays off. And so you see the purpose of it. I think the Chiefs just finished their third week of OTAs, right? So you come in during an off-season training, you had 2 weeks of intro, 3 weeks of hard lifting and running, and then it's 3 weeks of OTAs and a mini camp.
Veteran mini camp. Veteran mini camp, and then you're off, well, you're not off, but you get to go about your way and you're training, getting ready for training camp. And that's when you hit the ground running. That's truly when the season starts. I know everyone complains about preseason games and training camp and whatnot, but that's truly where you become a better team and you find out quick, what your identity is going to be. Of course, it tweaks throughout the season, but that's where you lay the foundation. It's in training camp.
Right. Oh, and that's kind of why I liked week 3 of OTAs, right? So OTAs can get monotonous. And like we talked about some of the pitfalls of it, but week 3 was fun because Andy Reid will make week 3 where you have 4 practices that week. So the first 2 weeks you have 3 practices. Week 3 you'll have 4 practices, and Andy Reid makes each practice devoted to one
division.
Yeah, team in the division, and then the first game of the season. And so you'll start to scout other teams, and that is when you start to get a little taste of what's to come. We're like, that's right. Like this is what's coming up. You start watching film and it's like, so that week was fun. That week was fun.
Yeah.
And then you're going against scout team during practice, right? The scout teams are running the show. And so you're actually seeing what you're going to play against. So that week is pretty fun. I don't know. Did you experience that the same way?
Yeah, it's definitely fun because you're closer to the season, and that's what we're all trained for. That's what we prepare for. And when you're doing those things, that means it's one step closer. So when you get to training camp, you can start to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And then week 1 comes, and it's time to go. And that's when you get excited. And that's honestly what we all miss the most when we retire is literally that first Sunday. It's running out that tunnel at Arrowhead. You smell a barbecue. You hear the fans going crazy. And you get that first play out your system, and then all those nerves are gone, and you're just gone.
You're going. The heat is up, right? Right. It's usually warm. You're sweating. Yeah. You're out there. You feel good, man. You make me want to just. Oh man, Jeff. I don't.
I was thinking about it, man.
Unbelievable.
Get some barbecue after the game. Oh man.
Oh. There's nothing better. You played a good game. You won the game, and then now you get to go out to eat with the fam and enjoy it. Oh, it's just there's nothing better. As a retired guy, there's nothing. You realize quickly you miss the ups and the downs, right? Like NFL season is you can get so low and so high and so low, and then you retire and everything's just sort of like steady, and you're like. What are we doing? Like something's got to, but you never get to experience that again.
There's beauty in the struggle, and I think that you can't replicate that necessarily in real life. I don't think you want to.
Right. That's a good point.
The term we use is no pain, no gain.
Right.
And pain could be mentally or physically. Without any of those ups and downs, or those situations where you have to persevere. You don't grow and you don't learn. And I think, you can carry it over to real life. So the things that you deal with in life, you always have to, find the silver lining in it and figure out ways to get better.
Right. Well, we're going to get into a lot of that as we move forward. Our next episode will be a sort of special edition just on training camp and what training camp's like. And we have so many stories there. But before we head out, Jeff, let's turn to some Twitter questions. We reached out to Twitter. And we got a few questions here, so let's answer a few before we go. This is from at the DQ. He asks, "We okay on defense? Because I feel like we are not. Feel we need a spark." So I don't know, Jeff. You've been there recently. How do you feel about this sort of defense that Spags has? The roster he's got. Obviously, we know the defensive scheme is good, but what do you think of the roster right now on defense?
I think they have a pretty good core. Obviously, it starts with the Honey Badger. He's the heart and soul of that defense. And his attitude kind of permeates throughout that group. You got guys like Frank Clark, who's always going, giving 100% effort, who's also a leader. Then you got big Chris Jones in the middle, man. He's probably one of the most dominant defenders, the most scary defenders in the NFL. So it kind of starts with those 3 guys, and then from there, everybody feeds off their energy. And then Spags, he's always game planning well. He's always
Right.
putting guys in positions to succeed. And, it's week by week. I mean, obviously they have their foundation, their core, and what they do. But he's always going to find ways to throw that, opposing offense off.
Yeah. And you know what's great about defense that I think is a bit different with offense is on defense. Like I remember with Rex Ryan when I was with the Jets, he would always say, listen, whatever you're doing, if you're going to make a mistake or if you're getting out of your stance, just go 100 miles an hour, right? Like just go 100 miles an hour and just let the chips fall where they may, but go out there, have fun and play. And that's really something you can do on defense is let it rip. And especially in Spags defense, right? He's so aggressive. He wants the guys. I mean, you're playing the run on the way to the quarterback. You're 100 miles an hour upfield, getting after it, and so that can cover a lot. That can cover for some maybe some
That's
talent.
That's why I was always jealous of defensive players. I mean, you guys have gaps, and you go full speed.
Right.
For us, there's a million things going on in our heads, and trying to figure out how to make adjustments mid play. So,
right.
Congrats, man. You're athletic enough to play D-line.
I was borderline. I could have went either way. It's interesting. When I was with the Jets, Eric Mangini, the last OTA, he had a switch. So the defensive lineman went and played O-line, and the offensive line went and played D-line. And just for this reason, to get a perspective of what it was like for the other position. And I remember playing that right guard position and just, looking at these guys moving all over the place and twisting it. And I was like, how in the world do they do this? Defensive line, it's like, put your hand down and either you're going straight, you're going right, or you're going left. That's it. And you just at the snap of the ball, you do that. I just couldn't believe you get that perspective from an offensive line perspective. It was shell shock. I was like, how in the world do they do this? How do they do this? People all over.
You have to be in unison, man. It's one group. If I'm not doing my job, then I'm making the guy next to me's job harder. So it's truly a responsibility. Yeah, it's crazy. It's a unique position. It's a lot of responsibility, but I honestly think that's the closest group in football it has to be. If you want to be good.
Jeff, I remember playing offensive lines who had perennial Pro Bowlers who obviously were good, and it made it difficult to play against. But that was nothing compared to playing against an offensive line of, solid starters who had been together for a long time. So like Buffalo was always like this. You had Eric Wood and Andy Levitre and all these guys who had played together for a while. That was 100 times harder than playing Dallas with all the Pro Bowlers that they had. You know what I mean? Or New England was the same way, right? With Logan Mankins and Matt Light and all these guys. They had been together for so long. They knew exactly how to work together. I'll take
it. And it makes it tough on you guys too, because I know when, toward my first tenure in Kansas City, toward the end of it, we didn't have to make calls. We didn't say a word. We knew exactly what to do. The center makes the point, and we're just rolling. So a defensive lineman wouldn't know if it was run or pass. I mean, you guys get indicators, on our calls, and sometimes we make dummy calls just to mess with you guys.
Yeah,
something that, make a run call when it's really a pass. And, you can't do that when you haven't been together for a long time. If you're playing next to someone who's new, that doesn't quite have that, rapport with you. So everything meshes together when you got a group that's been together a long time.
Jeff, I can't tell you how many times a veteran team would say, I'd be at the 3-tech position, so I'd have a guard and tackle in front of me, and they would say, deuce, deuce, deuce. I'm thinking, here we go. And what do you bet? The C's part, and it's just a trap.
You're getting drilled.
Smoke. Oh, that was scary when we played against the team that didn't communicate, because you knew, they know exactly what they're doing. That's bad. Offensive line, that's bad news. All right, let's finish up with one more, Jeff. And this one's perfect for you. This is King of the Old Code asks, I know it's the same question everyone has, but what are your guys' thoughts on how the O-line will shake out? So that's right up your alley, Jeff. What do you think? How's the O-line?
They'll shake out like this. The best 5 guys will play. That's always been Andy Reid's motto. I'll give my best prediction and my thoughts on it. But at the end of the day, the best 5 guys are going to play. I think right now the best 5 guys are obviously going to be Orlando Brown, Joe Thuney, the big free agent they just got. I'm hoping Creed Humphrey works out at center as a rookie. Kyle Long will be right guard, and probably a solid veteran, Mike Rimmers at right tackle. I think those will be the 5 guys. Obviously, that room is packed with talent. That's just, I guess it could be anyone. I mean, you got a young guy, Trey Smith, they drafted. You still got LDT in the room, who's a hell of a player, who's a starter in the NFL. So we'll see how that shakes out.
Right.
I mean, you got Nick Allegretti, who did a solid job at guard, but I think his true position is center, who's a great player. You got Andrew Wiley, who's still a young guy, who still has a ton of potential. Martinez Rankin, he's had some injuries, but this room is loaded with talent. There's a ton of guys that have position flexibility, that can play multiple positions, multiple spots, which makes it harder to pick who those guys are going to be. So I think it's going to be fun. At the end of the day, it's going to be the best guys out there, which is best for the team.
And it's amazing to think about, because I've been on so many teams where we'd finish out the year, you'd have gaps in the roster. You think, okay, organizations got to address those gaps, and they don't. Andy Reid and Veach, they don't mess around, right? You lose Jeff Allen, you lose Eric Fisher, you lose
Mitchell Schwartz,
and you think, how are they ever going to recover for this? Boom. Offensive line room. Like you said,
I forgot the guy that he set out last year name. I mean, he was a hell of a college player too. So, I mean, that room is loaded. There's not a shortage of offensive linemen. I think last year, with all the injuries and that Super Bowl, they just said, screw it, we got to load up. And I think that's the best way to go.
Right.
And Pat has time. He's gonna do some damage.
Yeah, I like the sound of that, brother. Well, Chiefs Kim, it's great to be back with you guys. Really appreciate this. Any feedback you have, shoot us on Twitter, Facebook, any of that. Let us know what's going on. Big Jeff, thank you. We'll see you again in a couple of weeks when we do our training camp special.
Can't wait. Go Chiefs.